The Sock Jig Sneaker Podcast is Cock of the Walk. Welcome to episode 78 of the Sock Jig Sneaker Podcast. I'm your host, Sock Jig. You can follow me on Twitter at SockJig and on Instagram as well. I got a lot of topics to talk about in this release. I'm going to talk about the recent releases, some of the Bred 1 fallout, and also recap the Union Jordan 1 release. And I have lots of news and notes over the last month and a half or so, from Tom Sachs putting on his big boy pants and announcing the Mars Yard 3.0. Kanye West is a Nazi now. I talked briefly about Cennat and Duke Dennis and Freddy Kreuger SBs, and I don't know who Duke Dennis is, but that doesn't matter. I also talk about Nike Skims and Kim Kardashian and why those two are getting together. I also briefly talk about Travis Scott and WWE, and that is kind of like a worlds colliding moment for me. Also give a little brief update on the StockX and Nike lawsuit and my thoughts about that, about why they were found liable on this. Also talk about sneakers and tariffs, especially when it comes to me here in Canada. And it's a little bit hard to do a segment on tariffs and stuff because one, it's not my lane, but two, things change every week now. Something's implemented and repealed and back and forth over and over again. And then finally, I do a top 10 signs that sneakers are back. So it's a really packed show. There's a lot to cover in this. I apologize for the delay in getting this episode out. I've been really busy in real life and I've only had 20-30 minutes at a time to record or get my thoughts together. It's a densely packed sneaker podcast. There's a lot of topics and I'm basically your density is what I'm saying here. But there's also a light approach to things. I try to have fun with this episode. Sometimes people are not having fun when it comes to sneakers, but that's not me. I'm trying to see the positive, see the bright side, I guess. So first we'll do pickups, skips, and misses, and it's kind of a longer segment this time than usual, and I'll explain in just a little bit. So that's up next. For what's on feet and pickups and skips and misses, I'm going to change the order around a little bit, which will become clear a little bit later as to why. For skips, I skipped out on the Haven Asics Gel Nimbus 10.1. I love Haven. They have a store here in Vancouver. They have one in Toronto as well too, and I really love their private label clothing line that they've done. Is very underrated, and they've been putting out really nice collections for a while now. But this is mostly a black referee shoe with a little bit of gray on it, and so I can't do the black referee shoes, so I skipped this one out, but I hope that they get more collabs in the future and then I can support them next time. Also skipped out on the Black Toe 1 Reimagined. And, it's been called kind of the consolation prize shoe, which is not exactly a bad thing. It's just how one is compared to something else. In this case, it's being compared to the black metallic 5s, or of course the Bred 1s that were harder to get as well too. So when one item has large stock like this Black Toe one does, and the other ones have lower stock or more demand or whatever, so of course it's going to get a label in comparison. But in isolation itself, it's an awesome shoe. It's a very good sneaker. I love this Black Toe one. It's an OG, of course, but ultimately I skipped this because I already have the 2016 or is it 2017 pair, so I don't exactly need this. But of course, if it was super limited like the Breds were, then I would need it. That's just how sneakerhead math works. As Canadian poet Gord Downey once said, "We live to survive our paradoxes," and that's what we do in sneakers and sneakerhead math. That's how it works. That 2016 pair that I have is probably covered in crystals. I think I wore it once. If I open the box, it'll probably fly away like the crystalline entity. That was a timely Star Trek Next Generation reference for my nerds out there. But ultimately, this sneaker is one of those ones where it's an OG. It's on the shelves. It's under retail in the apps at some points. People might be waiting for it to go on sale. So everyone who is the everything should be a GR camp, this is the perfect sneaker for them. I also skipped out on the Undefeated Spiridon that came out, not by choice, but because it only dropped in store. But even if it was online, it's a nice sneaker, but it's kind of unnecessary, I think. And it's been limited to 1,000 pairs. And, the limited nature of a sneaker can elevate a good shoe. And if it's a good shoe in large numbers sitting everywhere, then you think like the black toe ones, oh, maybe I'll just wait for it to go on sale. But if it's limited here and you do kind of like it, but then you realize I got to put in some work now to get this. And this one being in-store only was kind of incentivizing that you got to put in a little bit of work to get this. Also, it was notable that they announced that there was only 1,000 pairs. So the gimmicks are back. I think the gimmicks are a good idea for a sneaker like this, to attach to a decent sneaker to take it to that next level. And they did. People came out in the street. So apparently there's more coming out in larger numbers. Another skip is the Air Max 1 Poly Adventure. This is the dot swoosh shoe that is inspired by the first Tomb Raider game. And it's not an actual official collab with Tomb Raider. It's just kind of referencing Tomb Raider without paying a license, I guess. But there's one design feature I wanted to bring up on this sneaker. You know, usually on an Air Max 1, at the bottom of the tongue, where the tongue is actually connected to the upper of the sneaker, there's a stitch there that kind of holds the tongue in place. And on an Air Max 1, it's usually just an oval stitch. But instead on these, it's a bit different. There's a straight line and there's two triangles. So Nike has literally put Lara Croft's triangle titties on a sneaker. In case you don't know, Lara Croft is the main character from the Tomb Raider video game, and in the first PC version of the game in the early 90s or whatever, she had these big triangle-shaped breasts, or triangle titties as I eloquently call them. And so, excuse my language here, I'm going to work a little bit blue for this segment, only because the word titty is just funnier to say. So Nike has literally referenced triangle titties on a sneaker. You know, so I have a question for the sneaker historians out there. Has Nike ever depicted titties on a sneaker before? has Nike ever depicted titties on a sneaker before? I don't think there's like a heavy metal magazine, Nike SB or something. You know, I'm not exactly an SB historian either. And there might have been titties on the heavy metal magazine SB. But if they haven't made that sneaker, then probably not. So Bryce Wong is the designer for Dot Swoosh, who made these, and I think he actually worked on the Nike SB team for the last few years, and so he is most likely the one responsible for the triangle titties. You know, it could have been designed by committee. Maybe someone else was like, hey, how about we put her titties on the little stitch here? And then Bryce said, that sounds like a great idea. And then, you know, my question is, did they have to present the design to get it signed off? And then who was signing off? Like, you know, they can't work from home now, so they're probably all in a boardroom in Beaverton with like this big presentation on the sneaker. And one of the slides, you know, slide 15 is the triangle titty stitch. And so did everyone stop and like look at it and be like, yes, that is approved? Did legal have to approve the titty stitching? Like, was the blue-haired lawyer from The Simpsons using, you know, a magnifying glass looking at the stitching like, yes, I think this should be okay? Or was this all like a skunkworks program where like, let's just kind of throw it in there and assume no one's going to notice, and even the blue-haired lawyer wouldn't notice? Or was the blue-haired lawyer like, you know, we got to get a patent on this titty stitch. Screw Crystal Dynamics. They're not going to oppose this in court. We could have a patent pending on a tongue titty stitch triangle. So I want to know the full story on how that stitch got there. All right, I'll stop saying titties now. For misses, I missed out on the Kobe 6 All-Star. That's probably the best Kobe sneaker since the Grinch. I really like how they changed the upper and made it stars. So it was nice to see a nice Kobe for once, because some of the recent drops I haven't been a huge fan of. It's been like these ones with the big snake all over it, or some of the more GR colorways are more just for the hoopers, the real hoopers. So missed out on those. I also missed out on the Kobe 9 Masterpiece, which is probably okay. And I think the only reason why I wanted it is because the first time it came out, I was chasing this one at Livestock Store in the Vancouver one. I remember they were going to get a late shipment and they're supposed to drop it in store whenever they get it. And I worked nearby that one, and then I never could get it. There was always someone closer who would go there and get it. And now you see it, and it was like, I remember chasing that sneaker for so long, and now it's back, and you know, it was kind of sitting. It's kind of available, but not exactly in a size 12 or a size 13. But I didn't see it anywhere. I entered one raffle in Canada on the Foot Locker app and missed it and just moved on. And kind of similar to that feeling of missing out on a sneaker is the Galaxy Foams. I missed out on those as well too. They didn't really drop in Canada. And so the only place for me to try it was on US sites. And, I entered a raffle or two where it was easy. And then on Sneakers app, the night before, I was like, I'm gonna set a mental alarm to wake up 5 minutes before 7 a.m. PST, because that's when the sneakers drops are here. And then I woke up at 7:20, so I guess I hit the snooze. In general, I've shared my feelings about retroing grails and how I'm not a huge fan of the concept. I think that they should be focusing on new stories. But as like a temporary stopgap solution for like a year or two, I think it's actually probably pretty fine to bring back these ones that people have always wanted, that the chase that people remember, and people are having fun with the sneakers. So it's unlocking a memory. And a friend of the show, Big Lex, put it really well on Twitter. He had a tweet saying, I'm going to be posting my 2025 Galaxy Foam pickup in the 2012 Galaxy Foam thread on Nike Talk, that it was a dream deferred. So a dream deferred summarizes this sneaker perfectly. So for him, I'm happy. And for anyone else who's able to hit that's been wanting it forever, obviously I'm happy. But as I said, overall general, with Nike's approach, I think this is a temporary thing. They should do it for a year or two, year and a half, whatever the cycle is, and then move on to what's next. And that part is still not super clear yet, but I guess we'll see soon enough. For pickups, I picked up the black metallic Jordan 5s, and this is one of those sneakers where I skipped out the 2016 version, so I did not have those, and so that was why I really wanted this pair. And whereas if I had that pair, I probably would have skipped this one. And so I'm glad I didn't, because this is a really great retro, great in hand. You really need to kind of see and feel how it is. The nubuck is really good. It's just vibrant in your hand, and it's getting good reviews for a good reason. And as I've been joking on Twitter, we're in this kind of big pants era, so it's good timing for a big chunky Jordan 5, I guess. And my minor complaint was from seeing the photos was that the Nike ear on the back was not knit. It was actually just like screen printed or something. But that's actually 3M, so it's a nice effect that it has, and really is one of the best retros I've seen in hand since probably the 2018 Black Cement 3s. And I'm sure there's been lots of other really good retros. I haven't seen them all in hand, but this one really stood out in hand. Next up was the Joe Freshgoods 992, and this was actually gifted to me by Joe Freshgoods himself. Thank you very much to Joe and his entire team for sending these over to me. I'm extremely honored and grateful that he would consider me, to think about me, and then send it over. This is all at cost to him and his team, and so I don't take it for granted. It really is an honor to receive something like this. And, sometimes you'll see this talk about seeded sneakers and content creators, and I always just feel like separate from that when I actually do get something, it actually just feels a little odd at first, but then like you have to take it as an honor that it is, that someone has deemed you worthy of like receiving this gift from them. And so, I don't really have any answers or a guide on how to get seeded sneakers or anything. If I did, it would be something like, okay, make jokes about sneakers on Twitter for like 7+ years. Somewhere along the way, start a sneaker podcast, and then have someone like Joe or any other brand or someone else take notice and ask for your address. That's the 3 easy steps on how to get seeded sneakers. The shoe is awesome in hand. They look great on foot. The toe box down view is great. The quality is great. The suede is really nice. Even the lining, it's like this soft velvet, and it's not like a thick velvet like the Sean Wotherspoon 97 that kind of pull your socks down. This does not pull your socks down, but it's a soft velvet, and it kind of almost reminds me of the Air Force One linen sock liner, which is satin, and this one's not satin, but it's still soft. And so what I'm saying is they feel great when you put them on. And that's just one of those features, the sock liner itself, that sneaker brands need to think about more, that it just adds so much to the comfort and feel on foot. I also really like the aged well name of the sneaker and of the campaign itself to indicate like this 5-year anniversary with New Balance. And, one of the segments I did on this podcast like last year was like, how are these collaborators aging with their brand partners? We need a new crop of collaborators because some of them are getting stale, because that's what happens when you have a lot of sneakers, that it's easier to get stale than come up with new and fresh stories. So I was comparing it to bands where they often have their whole lives to come up with that first album, and then they have to turn around and have a second album pretty quickly, and it could be decent or there could be a big fall off. And sometimes it's the case with collaborators where, the first one is good, the second one's kind of decent, and then it kind of, falls off a cliff from there. because it becomes harder to be creative with the product, the story, and to connect with the audience. But that's not a problem for someone like Joe, who's probably got so many ideas and so many avenues that he can explore. So obviously, I'm happy for Joe. I'm happy for this new role that he has with New Balance as well too. And I hope that means that's a lot more money for him, for his team and his employees. And he's announced he's releasing a documentary that kind of shows behind the scenes about this whole process. So I'm looking forward to seeing that. And I'm also wondering if this new deal with New Balance means that he's exclusive to New Balance. Does that mean that he's no longer can do Vans sneakers or something like that? So I guess we'll have to get Joe back on the podcast to ask him about that. So, but back to the sneaker itself and the release, it seems like a lot of people were able to pick these up. There was pop-ups, a raffle, an online drop, an in-store. So there was like a lot of avenues covered. And you never know when it comes to a 992 because it's normally a protected franchise that has higher retail and a certain like quality threshold as well too. So usually that means that you make less of them, you make fewer pairs. But this time it seemed like they made enough pairs to satisfy the demand, so which is really nice to see. And so, as I've talked about in my collab series, that there's less risk if you make fewer pairs, but if you believe in the product, if you believe in the story, you believe in yourself, and you take that risk, then there's more reward. And not just financially, but connecting with the audience and giving them a product that they want, but also financially as well too, because the money is rewarding to make as well. I was also happy to pick up the Bred 185 High, and this is an in-store only drop, and the closest store to me in Vancouver here are either the Undefeated in LA or the one in Las Vegas, both of which are around 2,000 kilometers away, but I got them. And it was a friend who helped me out on these, and talking to him weeks before this release, he was like, hey, I should be able to sort you out on these. And I was like, wow, really? That's awesome. Thank you. So whenever you hear that, you're obviously excited and happy, but you also know that this is one of those sneakers where you might get sorry, man, plans have changed, due to the complexities and vagaries of the market, things have changed and we don't have a size 12 for you. So I didn't want to get too excited. And honestly, I was just grateful that a request was even being made on my behalf for a size 12, because that was literally the only chance I had for them, because they're not dropping anywhere near me at all. It was in Canada itself. It was only in Toronto. And like I said, the other one was in Las Vegas or LA. So when someone says I might be able to sort you out, my attitude was, as my American friends like to say, okay, bet. So in-store raffles and the drop happens and people are copying and they're happy, and some people are mad, and which we talked about in the last episode. I post a Mr. Brightside, things move on, and I don't hear anything. I don't get anything. And I also don't ask, because if someone is doing you a solid, doing you a favor, I don't want to be bugging them about it either. But I am then assured, hey, you should still be good. And so I just said, okay, bet. And then a few days later, I get an invoice for a size 12, but there's nowhere to put an address. And so I'm like, should I just pay this and assume it'll get to me somehow? I check in with my friend. I tell him the situation, and he's like, yeah, basically it'll get to you. So my response is going to be, okay, bet. So I pay the invoice and I trust the process. And a week or so later, it shows up in my mailbox in the US. So I didn't get tracking. I didn't get anything like that. I didn't ask about shipping or anything. So shout out to the people who helped me secure this. Shout out to my friends. And, I'm not going to name the people or the store. I would if they wanted me to. And I'm not 100% sure, but I don't think these came from like stock that was going to be allocated for the public. I think it came from like a friends and family allocation. I'm not 100% sure on that. So I'm thankful for someone in that allocation who either didn't want these or they had as an extra size 12 for me. So whatever the situation was, like I said earlier, I'm just grateful and honored to be selected. And thank you to my friend, of course, who looks out for me. And just to be clear, this is like an in real life friend, not just like an online friend. And this friend could decide to change careers tomorrow to interior design, and the sneaker assist would just evaporate. But that's the only thing that would change is the sneaker assist, and everything else would be exactly the same. And the other thing with this sneaker is if you're a collector is you really do have to wear it. There's no point of just keeping it on a stack. It's one of those ones where it's special and notable, so you almost are forced to undead stock it. And so that's at least one thing I think Nike and Jordan got right on this sneaker. And I really do appreciate how OG they made it. I was joking in the last episode that they had to send away for special instruments and stuff, and had to use a hairdryer to glue the tag on. But I remember on the Lost and Found ones, it was like, oh, it's like it's found in an old shop. But then when you grab it, you take the shoe tree out of it, and the shoe tree's got a Jordan logo on it. So this time they addressed that. They had like a paper insert inside. So they really did look over every single detail as they could. I also copped the Union Jordan 1. This is quite the collection of pickups here for this episode. Yeah, I casually got the Bred ones and the Union Jordan ones and Joe Freshgoods 992. So, I'm always honest with my audience. And so this is what I'm telling you what happened. And these Union Jordan ones, I was able to cop early on a friends and family site. So thank you to my friends and thank you to Union for getting me on that list. And how that works is that Access is basically rolled out before the official drop, like a few weeks earlier. You get an email and there's instructions in the email. It's basically a password to bypass the kind of the first screen that you get. And then you log in with your email and password. And then you have access to unlimited clothing and exactly one sneaker. And, some might have access to buy more sneakers. I think I've seen some screenshots on Twitter where people have checked out like a couple of them. But for me, it said you can buy unlimited clothing in exactly one sneaker. And the thing about it is, I think you have to be on their actual like whitelist on their back end to be able to check out. Similar to how Action Bronson and other sites have done this, where you have to be like a VIP. And so luckily I made it onto that list. So I was able to buy the sneaker there. And then, it's a nice feeling to have it secured before the drop. And, just you don't have to think about it. And then the nicer part was it actually shipped like 4 or 5 days before the official drop. And because they're based in LA, it just went up the coast to me. And so I actually got it delivered on release day. So that's why I could post photos of it in hand after the raffle was already over on the same day. So, I will talk about the release and everything that happened with the release a little bit later in the releases segment. But in hand, the quality is great. It's just like the first Union ones. And even that summer of 96, the quality on that was awesome. So if you've never seen those first Union ones and you cop these, then you're in for a treat. Lastly, I also picked up the Yuto SB, the new Matcha ones. I think people are calling them asparagus, but I believe it's Matcha. And for these, my local skate shop dropped them, and in a group chat with some friends, some Canadian friends, one of the friends, my friend named Gord, announced it to the group that, hey, if you're near this skate shop, go by. And that skate shop is literally just like down the street from me. So I went by and I picked them up, and I guess I saw like half hour later, the reseller local kids came by and picked up the rest. But glad to have my pair, glad to have a Canadian friend named Gord. That's like the most Canadian name there is. So if you're Canadian, you must have minimum 2 friends named Gord. And that's kind of been the theme with all these pickups. It's just like, be a good person, have fun with your friends, and your friends will look out for you. Your friends will help you out. And sometimes it comes in bunches, and sometimes it's like once in a while. But overall, even if no sneaker assist comes, hey, in this world of shit, you got friends around you. So that's plenty enough. So but back to the sneaker, it's a purple box, which means it's generally a GR sneaker, just like how the recent player editions of the SBs have been. So these might be widely more available, but because the last one was like a quick strike or whatever and quite coveted, so still might be hard to get, but might be more pairs than the last one was. Also, the purple box and them being a GR-ish sneaker is the only reason I have them early, not for any other special treatment or anything. I think if skate shops get them, they can drop it because it's just a GR. And it seems like Nike has been loosening when stores can release sneakers a bit, which is good to see. So hopefully that means more of these kind of shock drops, and stores get the benefit of dropping early before sneakers and other wider releases. So that was pickups, a longer list than usual. And as I said, I'm always honest with my audience and kind of talk about the sneakers that I can get and the sneakers that I luck into. And with the tariffs and stuff coming up, it might be time for me to just enjoy the sneakers I do have for a little bit. But let's talk about some more news items, and we'll talk about sneaker releases as well too. First up, I'll talk about some recent releases. The Bred 1 Fallout as well too. I remember I saw a tweet from LA3 saying that this is one of the best and worst sneaker releases in history, and that's a pretty accurate statement. And they went all out with a lot of stuff, but there was so few stock and limited to so few stores that not everyone could get a pair. So I was wondering, like, do they even have a marketing budget for the rest of the year? Did they just spend it all on this one? And the other thing I was going to talk about was just the price. There was just not enough pushback I saw on the $250 price on these Bred ones from other platforms. I certainly talked about it in the last episode, and I said they probably priced it at $250 just because they know they could. They know they could get away with it. They know they could treat sneakerheads like shit. And it really did seem like there was 10K-ish stock in North America. Maybe there was more worldwide, but it's also possible they priced these sneakers at $250 to make up for this fact, to make up for the fact that stock was so low. They could have been in a boardroom and said, hey, we're addicted to this big revenue from the big restock era that we just came from, but we know we got to make a change. We know we got to create some energy. We know we got to reduce stock. But how do we get back to the revenue that we've become accustomed to? And so one guy probably said, hey, what if we just charge $250 so we can treat sneakerheads like shit? And everyone else started clapping and stood up, and they called that person a genius. So that's probably how we transition from big restock era to 10,000 pairs, but still, you don't go down to a small revenue. You still make up for a little bit of the difference. But the precedent has been set, and it seems like this is going to be the model going forward for 85 highs. I can't remember what the next one is. There was some Chicago one floating around as well too. I'm not even sure if that was fake or if it's real. It probably seems like it's a fake one. But the precedent has been set, and I'm not sure where the line is. Could they go full Ticketmaster and introduce dynamic pricing for the Chicago 185 high? That would be hard to do for in-store drops. You're going to have to tell every store, hey, today the price is $250. Hey, it's actually $300 now. But if it was in the sneakers app, you could just do what Ticketmaster does for Beyonce tickets and do whatever surge price is happening based on the number of people looking at that page at that time. Yeah, I joke about this, but the way the future is going, I can't rule it out. Then there was the Union Jordan 1 release, the Chicago Shadow release. Were you able to get a pair? Were you able to wear them with the big pants? Overall, this is a really good drop. In store, they had a really long line. It really is a flex to say you had one of the longest lines in years. And say stock was big, as we kind of know, as we saw with how many winners there were. Say stock was big. Say it's like 50K. And you are Chris Union, and you're looking out the door at your store, and there's lines for blocks, and you have 50K stock. You're probably like, shit, I'm going to make a lot of money here. This is great. So it must have been a good feeling to have a ton of stock and have a ton of people there wanting the sneaker that you have and also making money. It seemed like whoever went to the line was able to get a pair, or at least the most people did. They even had some fun stuff like the golden ticket stuff. So if you had that, you could get a pair right away. And from all accounts, it seemed like the line, after a while, became a little bit more efficient. Some people said they were only in line for like 35 minutes. So that's pretty good. And then it was going to be online drop time for the rest of it. And the whole time, they announced this as online at Thursday at Supreme Time at 11 a.m. Eastern Time, 8 a.m. Pacific Time. So if you're an online veteran who listens to this podcast, you were probably getting ready for these online drops. It was the first big online drop in a long time. One where, people had a general sense that there was going to be quite a bit of stock. And so people were ready to go. But then it was announced that it's a raffle. And you could just enter the raffle. I think it was open for like an hour or so. I actually entered a size 10 for a friend, and he entered for a size 10 for himself as well too. And neither one of us won, but it seemed like there was a lot of winners. So many people that I follow on Twitter on the timeline were posting their wins, and that was great to see. Honestly, it's great to see a community win. Like I said, stock must have been huge. It might have been like 50K or whatever the number is. But of course, not everyone was able to hit, and I saw one of these tweets where, those Soul Links or Kicksfinder type tweets where it says, how'd you do on the drop? And I remember one of the responses I saw in the reply says, this was a gaslighting ass drop, meaning that it was going to be a first come first served drop, and then they switched it to raffle at the last second. And one of the theories that I have on why they made it a raffle, I'll talk about kind of at the end. But overall, I think Cloudflare and Shopify working together had a pretty good system in place to stop bots, to make it fair. Cloudflare actually has really good anti-bot protection. It's pretty strong. I'm not in this world day to day, but from what I've heard and from people in the know, have said that it's pretty strong. And the other thing the union did was they just had their Shopify store set at like the strictest settings when it came to processing credit cards. Your billing had to match your shipping exactly, and they made that a part of their marketing or as part of their communication that you have to have it match, otherwise they're going to be canceled. And we saw people canceled, and when people post cancels, there's never any clear explanation of why. Maybe it's just bad luck. Maybe something did not match in the billing or shipping or whatever it is. And we also saw, and we haven't seen this in a while, are these photoshopped tweets of people posting raffle bot success, and it's just the same 2 or 3 people posting the same jokes over and over again, and it works. People fall for it every single time. You just look in the replies and people are angry. How dare you do this? You're an asshole. This should be for the people. And I said quite a while ago that I'm not going to police this stuff. If I know that it's fake, but I'm not going to make it my duty to go out there and say, hey, this guy is a fake. If someone's doing a bit, let them do a bit. And let the sneaker mayors, let them do their job. Whoever thinks of themselves as a sneaker mayor, you go out there and police it and determine if it's real or not. Oftentimes, sneaker mayors will do the opposite and fall for it and amplify it and believe it that it's true. But, people post these flex screenshots. No one ever posts the huge stacks. No one ever posts the cancel emails that they got, because that's not part of the bit. The bit is suckering people that you hit, that you were a success with the raffle botting or whatever it is. But the thing with this drop is, even if there were botted raffle winners, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter because there was a huge number of real people who won, and it doesn't matter because the stock was huge. So the pool of those people that won was very large as well too. That's just my approach to this thing. It's like there's no such thing as a perfect drop. There's no such thing as a perfect release. And there's going to be misinformation and there's going to be raffle bot success. But if the majority of real people that you know on Twitter, and I follow like 2,000 plus people on Twitter, and so many people I know posted wins, then I think it's a successful release. But people fall for this misinformation all the time. And even like, for example, EQL, and their company name is actually Equal. Someone from Equal asked me, hey, could you pronounce it Equal instead of EQL? And I said, okay, I'll try to make it a point to pronounce it as Equal. But if you are Equal and someone posts some misinformation about botting your raffle, you're going to go out there and go, hey, this is not true. We have not been botted. But if it's a competitor and someone posts some misinformation about your competitor's raffle being botted, then you're going to 100% believe it's true. And then you're going to go out there and say, hey, we actually do super fair raffles. But really, in my mind, both Equal and Shopify have their place. And for this release, because it seems like there was a ton of stock, all the customers who won did not have to pay Equal run fair fees. That's a huge win. That's like $6-7 or whatever it is. And Union didn't have to pay a cut to Equal either because they're already paying for Shopify Plus. So they just went with Shopify instead of Equal. Now, when it comes to Equal, people might think I don't like them. And that is not true. I think they're totally fine. They're actually very nice people whenever I've talked to people who work there. I think it's actually a great solution for small to medium-sized shops when stock is not too low and not too huge. Like when Joe Fresh Goods or Futura or these Nigel Sylvesters do a drop, they don't really have a full-on store where they need like the super premium Shopify version. So it's a good solution for them. But if you're, say, a boutique or shop and you have a drop come in and it's only like, say, 14 pairs, is there any reason to have an Equal raffle? you're just going to get a lot of people entering and a lot of people unhappy, and they're going to then accuse you of backdooring them. So it's probably easier for you to just pick the 14 winners yourself. And even then, you can just pick the winners who are VIP or whatever. You don't have to pay anyone else a cut, and it's 14 pairs. So why would you want to give any percentage of that out to anyone else? And then the opposite, like Union, if stock is huge, and if you already have a partner with Shopify Plus as like Ama Manier or Union does, and you're confident in them, that's the other thing. If you are convinced that they can get this right, then you don't want to give Equal a cut either. But Equal works great, I think, for smaller shops or anything in between, which is, most releases. Say you're a store and you're releasing some GR Jordans and you put up an Equal raffle for it. And say your stock is 75 pairs and you get 60 entries of it before the release happens. The release is going to happen on Friday. You put up the raffle on Monday, and by Thursday you have 60 entries that are going to be winners. That's 60 guaranteed sales before the drop has even happened. And those are credit cards that are on file at Equal and will most likely be charged and processed. And that is going to be money in the bank. So then that store, it's great for them because they know ahead of time, hey, I already sold 60 of them. I can sell the rest in store. But back to this Union drop, and why did Union make it a raffle? To me, it seemed like they had a target audience in mind. And that audience was not the first come, first serve online vets like myself. It was not meant for us. It was meant for the casual people, for the Instagram followers, for the email list followers, especially when the email sometimes is like 7 minutes delayed. It was for those people to enter 5 minutes after the drop, and you still had a pretty good chance. For an online drop, if you're not in the queue oftentimes in like the first 45 seconds, you're shit out of luck. So I think that's why they went with this approach, this Shopify approach with Cloudflare and all that kind of stuff, because they're already an existing partner. They're probably convinced by Shopify that they can make this happen, that it wouldn't be botted. And for Equal, I'm sure they could have handled this release, and it's possible they handle a future big release, like say Undefeated 4s, for example. But overall for Equal, they have to show value to customers, and they're trying to show it to sneakerheads, but how do they show value to the wider casual audience? Do they even intend to be known to that casual audience, or do they want to let the merchant just do that? But if they want to do that, their primary marketing is that we are fair and honest and we stop bots. That might work for a sneakerhead audience, but will it work for casuals? Will the casual person on Instagram comments or seeing an email 7 minutes after a drop care about that kind of stuff? Some of them will, but some of them probably don't even know what a raffle botter is. They don't even know a raffle bot exists. So there's no value in it for them that you are stopping something that I don't care about. So that's what I mean, where Equal has to show value to their customers. They have to provide value to their customers, and then they have to market that to bring those customers into their Equal Plus feature that they have. And that's what it seems like they're doing with like these new features coming out, like we'll retry your card, or you can pick an alternate variant or alternate size or whatever. And there was some uproar about this as well too. And I honestly don't have anything against these features. I'm not gonna you should them about this kind of stuff, about that, this should be a free feature. They're just trying to make money and be a sustainable business and provide value. And the only thing I'm gonna you should them about is you should care about privacy, which I already did an entire episode about. But the other lesson from all this was that the era of a big online drop that's on the internet, that's not Nike sneakers app or anything, the Shopify drop era is over. If I'm StockJig as the method man of sneakers, this is basically dead for big, huge drops. This was supposed to be the first big online drop in ages, and it didn't happen. It became a raffle. Travis Scott became a raffle before this, and Ama Manier, sometimes they siphon off their stock to in-store drops, and even they do Equal raffles before and then drop whatever's left online. And it even seems with them, the stock that they usually get is going to be reduced going forward. So this era is truly over. The online vets like us, we loved it. We were prepared. We knew how to handle it. We knew what to do. But all good things must come to an end, and we are now entering a new phase. Tom Sachs is back. Tom Sachs put on some pants one day and announced the Mars Yard 3.0 is coming in the fall with the caption, "Action will be required," which leads to ask, what action? Is there going to be like a space camp for resellers again? Do you got to sort the used and unused pens to the correct order? Do you got to place the lotion in the basket? So if you want the sneaker, some action may be required. You might be required to put the fucking lotion in the basket, or else it gets the hose again. So, sorry. Silence of the Lambs, if you not see it. That was a Silence of the Lambs reference. So, Tom Sachs officially is not canceled, of course. And really, I guess he can't cancel someone who ultimately didn't do anything illegal. He was just creepy. But he's also an artist of high stature, and he's friends with the right people. It helps to be friends with Mark Parker and Tremaine and Cynthia Liu and Easy October and all these people. So just follow them and watch them on their IG stories. They all tag each other and are cool with each other. So that's why these sneakers are coming out. So who's going to push back? Of course, it's left to us. The community is the only people who are going to push back. And I've made jokes about him, of course, on here before and on Twitter. And I've also had some pointed criticism about Tom Sachs and Nike's whole handling of this episode since the very beginning. This is in the podcast previously called Delicate Genius. And as someone with a sneaker podcast, I feel like I've been probably harsher to Tom Sachs than most have. The emperor has no clothes, as I said in that podcast, literally. So, as I said, it's up to the community. No one else is going to do it. Influencers, no. Corporate, no. That's just marketing. Both of those people are marketing. But, of course, not everyone is going to do that. Some people can, of course, separate the art from the artist. Some will and some won't. Nike knows this. People are going to be like, oh, he was a shitty boss? That's too bad. I still need a size 11, though. Or, he turned a red cross on a first aid kit to a swastika. That's too bad. That's not exactly a deal breaker in 2025. I need a size 10.5. So again, that's just how sneakerhead math works. It's not exactly logic based. What's the phrase that everyone says now? We listen, we don't judge, we judge, we listen, something like that. So I don't exactly judge the consumer because I know you can be either way. You can separate the art from the artist or you can't. But I can judge Tom Sachs and I can judge Nike, I guess. And I can judge the sneaker itself. Like just on the sneaker merit alone, I don't think this Mars Yard 3.0 is necessary at all. Maybe it just fits their vision for the year of restocking grails. To me, it looks like a car that Homer designed, and maybe I'm biased because I have the previous one and I think that one is super fire. And this one, it just looks like they added a bunch of unnecessary shit to a classic. And strictly like sneaker design speaking, maybe I'm being harsh because he's an actual artist. Did Da Vinci or Picasso ever just reproduce a previous piece and add a bunch of new paint strokes on top? Those two are actually pretty prolific, so maybe they actually did. We'll look into that later on a future Great Painters themed episode of the StockX Sneaker Podcast. But honestly, it just tells me that adding all this unnecessary junk on there, that he had no other good ideas. The other good idea was a general purpose shoe, and they kind of already ran through that quickly enough. They could bring that back, but that's not adding any energy. And people want a 3.0 of the Mars Yard, so let's make it the car that Homer Simpson designed, is what he probably thought. And that's not exactly art, that's commerce, but this is what this has been the whole time. So Kanye's a Nazi now, and I was even thinking, do I even want to talk about this? There's like a new low every single day. And this started off with a Twitter rant, and people were excited. Kanye's back on Twitter. We're going to get these epic Twitter rants. And then they went south really quickly. And I don't know if you remember, but when he started doing that Twitter rant that night, that's when that huge Luka Doncic Lakers trade happened. So that's all anyone really wanted to talk about. So Kanye kind of just stopped tweeting that night because he realized people were too busy talking about this mind-blowing trade instead. But then, of course, he started back up later again. He started talking shit about Virgil Abloh. That's kind of low, disrespecting the dead. And probably so many more things. I eventually muted and tuned out. And I tuned out even before it went to like really, really low. But before that, I remember seeing people asking in the replies and in Instagram comments, like, where's my shipping on my Yeezy slides, fam? I just remember thinking, fuck your slides, man. He's pissing on Virgil's grave here and you're worried about your $20 drop shipping junk. But it eventually did get lower because he declared himself a Nazi and he started tweeting out a swastika t-shirt and then actually went ahead and put it on sale on his site. And this is a good time to mention that this is an anti-Hitler sneaker podcast, as I declared last episode, which is pretty good timing on my part. I don't know what the other sneaker podcasts, what their policy on Hitler is, but the StockX Sneaker Podcast is an anti-Hitler sneaker podcast. So it just goes to show that it's never too late to declare yourself an anti-Hitler sneaker podcast. So he's selling a swastika t-shirt on sale on his site. He eventually does stop his Twitter, but he puts the shirt on sale and it's up for like an entire day. And I remember thinking, it's like, wow, okay, that's going to be shut down really quickly. And it's not. It's just sitting there. It's all day. It's sitting there. No response from Shopify. No response from the CEO or the executives on Twitter or emails or whatever official communication they're going to do. It's just still wild to me that the response was not the same day. I know the tides have turned in the US and you'd think the line would be, fucking Nazi symbols are not okay, but sadly, it's not. Now, the Shopify CEO, his name is Toby Lutke. He's Canadian, but he's originally from Germany. And the president, his name is Harley Feinstein. Now, I'm not going to say what race of people Harley Feinstein is. I might get in trouble for that, but he's a Jewish tech executive. He's a Jewish tech executive. Anyways, what I'm basically saying is, of all the people in the world, those two should be pretty aware that Nazis, not good people, and we're not something that we want to be associated with. I'm sure they did feel that, but you had to get the lawyers involved and you had to spend the day talking to the lawyers on how we want to proceed. So I'm guessing that's why there was a delay. The next day, they did take the store down. And, what do you do with all the orders of slides and drop shipping? And honestly, I don't give a fuck. Go ask Fam over on his Instagram comments what his plan is. You order $20 slides? Fucking ask him. Who gives a shit about your fucking slides? This guy's pissing on Virgil's grave and you want $20 slides? Fuck him. But the one thing I was thinking about is who actually made money from the sale of the swastika tee, which, obviously they shut the site down. So I'm assuming all the orders were refunded to the Nazis that bought the swastika tee. And so from this, I'm assuming Kanye did not make any money because it was all refunded, but there's always service fees and things like that. So did Shopify make money on those service fees? Maybe, but usually the service fees is just like a fee that the credit card processor charges Shopify. So you charge us 3%, we're going to charge the store 3%. Maybe they skim a little bit on top. So if they did, maybe they did make a little bit of money. But the credit card companies charge a transaction fee on orders placed, and that fee is not refunded because that's like the cost of doing business, right? Unless the stores have set all their transactions to be like manually captured versus automatically captured. Like when I sell socks on my site, I do it manually. I have to review orders and then I let it go through. But a store that does large volume or is notable or does like Super Bowl ads, they probably have automatic processing for payments and all that kind of stuff. So at the end of the day, it was probably only the credit card companies that made money off swastika tees. But back to Kanye, he was filmed later in a parking lot with a swastika t-shirt on. Next, he'll probably be filmed doing the Nazi salute because that's where we are in America now. And he'll probably do the full extended one that Elon did. Maybe if he's caught in the street in the paparazzi, he'll do the casual Nazi salute that Hitler used to do, where he just kind of flops his hand back and palm goes straight up to the sky. The dainty version of the Nazi salute. But it's just wild to me that it's come to this. And actually, it's wild that, Adidas actually got out at the right time. They just announced the other day that they've sold their last pair that they had. And so they're probably like, whew, we dodged a huge bullet there with the swastika bullshit. And also, remember back when the University Red Travis Jumpman Jack came out and Kanye was in like a promo ad for it? I can't remember if it was an official ad or not, or if it's just Travis posted it on his Twitter or whatever. But he was wearing the Jumpman Jacks, and rumors appeared at the time that Kanye could be back with Nike soon. So can we get an update on that? All these sneaker insiders who reported those rumors, Is Kanye going to be in Beaverton walking around headquarters campus, in a full Hugo Boss SS outfit, casually doing the hand floppy Nazi salute, looking for a building to annex? Can we get an update from those insiders on that? Is Nike still considering this? Anyways, now it's back to tuning him out. I think we can write him off for good. And I think from all this, the lesson to learn is that if you just tune him out, he's just going to stop posting this bullshit. But I don't know. Graduation is just that good for some people, not for me. So Nike announced a partnership with Kim Kardashian's Skims brand. And this is not just like a collab deal or anything. It's actually much more than a partnership. It's like a sub-brand under Nike, similar to how Jordan brand is, which is obviously something that Nike doesn't do very often. And before I start on this, I know what you're probably thinking. Finally, a man is here to mansplain women's activewear to me. I'm going to keep it brief and stick to kind of some of the themes that I've talked about on this podcast. So why are they doing this deal with Kim Kardashian and Skims? First off, apparently Skims is good. Like, people like it. And they've got a partnership with other brands, with the North Face and the NBA, and they make like women's intimate wear as well too. But for this one, it seems like it's more active wear. And so Nike has generally done a poor job in women's division in activewear. You see the rise of Lululemon and Alo Yoga and all these other kind of smaller competitors come into the space and gain a big audience. And it seems like they've been able to do that with quality fabrics and shapes that the women like. And so you'd think Nike would have a huge head start on this, actually, because they have a big R&D department and they can be upfront on innovative fabrics. But the smaller competitors came up with some good product. And as I was talking about, product is king. Another thing I wanted to bring up was she has 357 million followers on Instagram. And say you can convince 0.01% of them to buy something from you, that's 3.57 million people. So obviously there's not going to be that many buyers of the product itself. But even if you take 0.01% of the 3.57 million, that's still like 35,000 or whatever. I was thinking of this only because there was a report recently in Variety or Discussing Films or, one of those accounts where they said that Hollywood studios and Hollywood producers are now looking at the social media follower accounts of the actors and actresses that they want to hire for their movies before they're picked for the role. Meaning, if you have a lot of followers, then you're more likely to be hired. And I think it was actually maybe like Ethan Hawke or someone who said this, but those producers are apparently just doing the same math. That what if that one actress with 50 million followers can convince 0.01% of their audience to watch? We'll be in the green then. But there's no guarantee in this in product wear. Beyonce has like 300 million followers on her account and she couldn't sell Ivy Park. So the product still matters. The product is still king. The other thing I was thinking about with this was how Fear of God Athletics worked at Adidas. Like, when you do a partnership like this, it has to be in its own lane and it can't take away from what your main thing is. And it also has to have a market for it. So obviously there's going to be a market for women's activewear. And most likely they're not going to make it $600 or whatever, like how Fear of God Athletics did, making luxury athletic wear for a market that doesn't really exist. So I'm assuming the Nike product will be limited to activewear because that's what Nike is about and not about intimate wear. Because like, why would Skims want Nike to make the product that they can make themselves and make more money on? So finally, Kanye. Kanye allegedly owned 5% of Skims and he sold that stake in 2023. And Puck News reported this back in June 2023 that he sold off his stake. And the New York Times, in the announcement of this Nike Skims deal, said that Nike and Skims have been working together since October 2023. And so when I saw this news, my first thought was Nike probably said, Kanye's got to go. He's got to sell his stake before we can get a deal in motion or agreed upon. We cannot work with Kanye West. So obviously, I'm not saying this as an insider and reporting this as a fact or anything. That's just my opinion on it. And as I've said before, you don't need to be an insider. You could just use logic and reason and have a memory for useless things. And when I look back on this and all the dates matched up and everything, it just makes sense. Plus, if I was a Nike executive, I'd be saying that in the boardroom. I'd be the guy in the corner saying, hey, what about Kanye? We can't have Kanye West goose-stepping here in Beaverton headquarters. So if I can think about it, a Nike executive who lives and breathes this stuff can probably think about it. So that's all I have. So hopefully I've mansplained that enough for you. Cennat was in sneaker news recently because he gifted Duke Dennis a size 13 Freddy Kreuger SB. And obviously, I'm an old man, so watching streamers is not really a thing for me. All these headlines to me look like that one tweet. Curtains for Zusha? You won't believe what Black Boy did to K-Smog on his live today, or whatever that tweet was. And these streamers, they are the next generation of stars. I get that. There's always going to be stars in sports and music and Hollywood, of course. But for 18 to 27-year-olds or whatever it is, they are watching these live streamers and the stars are there and they got the budgets for it. And I was thinking about that. If you're a live streamer, it's probably harder than ever to break through. Like, how do you promote your live? You just got to be online a lot. And if someone just joins, it's probably going to be at a boring moment. So you got to go back and edit together all the best parts and put it on TikTok and YouTube videos. Honestly, sounds like a lot of work. And on top of that, you're competing with the Cennats and the Zushas and the Plaque Boys and the K-Smogs. And some of those I might have made up and some of them are probably real. But who has the budget and eyeballs to compete with that? And, you're not going to have Kevin Hart drop by or Drewski on. And you're not going to buy your friend Freddy Kreuger SBs. The real question I have is, why do so many people have Freddy Kreuger SBs all of a sudden? Makes you wonder, but let's put our thinking caps on. So supposedly there was only like 50 pairs and probably less than 50 pairs. I think it was like 30-ish or so, but let's say it was 50 pairs. And these were apparently sourced from Prestige in North Carolina. And the one guy who was contacted and he sourced it and he found it and he was flying it over and he had it in like the washroom in the airplane and he had it on his head or whatever. And he had this caption says, quote, "We were contacted on Friday and asked if we could please help him get a size 13 Freddy for Duke Dennis's birthday. After countless people said the best they could do was a 12 and a half, and then it continued right there, but full stop. That's when I stopped reading that caption because what the fuck? Why do countless people have a size 12 and a half Nike SB Freddy Kreuger? Now, I am not a historian on SBs and Freddy Kreuger and this release, but if I was a con man, I would say, no, man, there was way more than 50 pairs. You just don't know. There was like way, way more, and these are legit. Trust me, they're legit. That's what I would do if I was a con man. I would say I have size 12 and a half. I can source multiple size 12 and a half is what I would say if I was a con man, hypothetically speaking, of course. But what I do know is Nike SB has not made a size 12 and a half dunk probably like 15 years, even older than that. Probably like the early years is when they did. And I'm talking about the GRs here. And those GR 12 and a halves are unicorns. You might find one that's beat to shit on eBay or something. They barely exist. But for this Freddy Kreuger shoe, a release that was canceled, that only like one shop in Mexico mistakenly released those 30 or 50 pairs or whatever, all of a sudden there's multiple size 12 and a halves. I don't believe it. I personally think they're all fakes, of course, just using logic. If I was a con man, I would say you're wrong. You just don't know the full story. I got a guy at New Line Cinema. I got a guy at Nike SB. You just don't know, bro. These are legit. I could source them, man. And why do all these pairs look so crispy clean? This sneaker is like 20 plus years old or whatever it is. The box looks pristine. It's not like got creases. It's not got like bent corners or anything. The sneaker looks pristine. Why is that? I wonder why. Whoever got these multiple size 12 and a halves and size 13 must have taken really good care of these sneakers, I guess. Or they got them imported before these tariffs hit. But I guess the guy's happy with his size 13 Freddy Kreuger SB. So if, David Duke or Zusha or K-Smog or whatever is happy with their size 13 Freddy Kreuger that they got for $80K, God bless. Next up, Travis Scott and WWE are working together, and he was involved in this big John Cena heel turn angle on the last pay-per-view they did. And I actually know quite a bit about pro wrestling, and so this is kind of like a worlds are colliding moment for me. So I can give some insights here, and I'll swing it back to sneaker related kind of as well too. So Why he was there is obvious to me. It's most likely because of the mainstream coverage of it. Social media is important too, as I talked about with the Skims stuff. Travis has like 60 million followers, and a small percent of them watch. That's good. And you saw this how it played out afterwards. It was everywhere. Jon Stewart was talking about it. ESPN, Stephen A. Smith. So mainstream coverage, social media coverage, Travis Scott's young audience coverage. It's also involving The Rock, who's like the top star in Hollywood. So, hey, you want to be involved in a big angle with the top star in Hollywood in front of the 40,000 people, whoever were there in attendance? Yeah, that's a no-brainer. And also similar to the Nike and Skims thing is that when you are like a number one promotion, you are the top in your kind of brand, like how Nike is or how WWE is. You want to work with other top acts. You don't want to be involved with someone who's second or third place. You know, WWE worked with Bad Bunny before, and he did a few matches. And, you know, Bad Bunny is a top star in his genre of music. So for rap, WWE wants Travis Scott there. Even if, you know, Travis Scott has like lost it a little bit in the streets and stuff, it doesn't matter for the mainstream version, for a WWE audience. He's a top star for them. And they're not going to want someone like Key Glock or West Side Gun or anything. And it's nothing against them. West Side Gun is actually a huge wrestling fan and is often ringside at their shows, but he's just not at that top tier level yet. So it's been said that WWE was planning something big for Travis Scott for months, and Travis Scott has been training. It's honestly going to be hilarious seeing him in the ring actually wrestling. The dude probably weighs like 145 pounds, and you're going to have these pro wrestlers have to sell for him and make him look good, because when you're a star, you get treated like a star. And when you're a level below, your job is to make the star look good. That's how pro wrestling works. But as you probably saw the viral clip going around where he punched Cody in the face, he's got to learn that this is a work, that you got to kind of pull your punches a bit. It didn't seem like he knew what he was doing in there. He punched Cody Rhodes hard, give him a black eye and a ruptured eardrum. And usually in pro wrestling world, when someone does that to you, there's usually a receipt, which is pro wrestling slang for payback. You get a punch back in a match or something. But again, when you have a star system, it's unlikely that's going to happen. And I was joking around on Twitter as well too that you'll see a Travis Scott versus Bad Bunny feud. And I was joking the Nice Kicks is going to start preparing the Jordan versus Adidas templates right now for their social media posts. But even that wouldn't work at all. You can't have one top star versus another top star. Who's going to sell? Who's going to put the other one over? Meaning who's going to win and who's going to lose? Travis Scott is going to pin Bad Bunny? I wouldn't allow that if I was Bad Bunny's management. And so that brings me to what I was thinking about was during that show where Travis Scott was at, Complex posted a photo where it showed VP of Jordan Brand, Reggie Saunders, accompanying Travis Scott into the arena. So he was there, and I was wondering, did Jordan Brand actually know that their top collaborator is essentially turning heel, turning bad guy? And if you're not into pro wrestling, you know, you'd think that of course he would know, but this is a carny business. You protect big stuff for big angles. It's also got an entire industry for leaks and spoilers. So anything like this, they don't want it like leaking out onto the internet and ruining their big surprise that they have. So they keep it close, and only the people in the company that need to know. And apparently that was a story here. A lot of the top stars, other wrestlers did not know. So that leads me to ask, did Reggie at Jordan Brand know? Does he even have a say in it? If like, hey, Jordan Brand is your partner, we don't want Travis Scott, the performer, to be a bad guy with The Rock in a big audience. And Travis Scott's probably not going to listen to that. I can do what I want. I'm not your employee. I'm your partner. So I'm guessing that Reggie and Jordan Brand did not know until last minute, maybe a day of or a day or two before. And it really is not a big deal if he is like a heel, a bad guy getting booed by the crowd, because pro wrestling is nudge, nudge, wink, wink nowadays. It's not as protected as it used to be. But I was thinking, are, the Beaverton Nike executives aware of this? If they're not into wrestling at all and only have the memories of Hulk Hogan and stuff, they may not know the ins and outs of what the audience thinks now. Do those people, are they questioning, why is our top guy smacking Cody Rhodes and being booed? Anyways, WrestleMania is coming up in a few months here. And so apparently Travis Scott will be involved much more going forward. And so there probably will be some angles. If he's in the ring, it's going to be pretty sad. The guy's like 145 pounds throwing punches. But maybe he'll debut some new sneakers and everyone can post a photo of a 145-pound Travis Scott going through a table in a new colorway of the Cactus Jack, T-Rex, Basement Jacks, or whatever they're called. And we'll all get these social media moments that Travis Scott wants and WWE always wants. There was an update in the Nike versus StockX lawsuit where a judge ruled that StockX is liable for selling counterfeit Nike sneakers. Nike won a partial summary judgment, as it's called, where they sold 37 pairs of fake Jordan 1s to Roy Kim, who's also known as Sneaker Strut on Instagram. And I was the one who actually broke this part of the story, the specific sneakers that were involved, that it was all Jordan 1s, including University Blues and Mocha 1s. I spoke to Sneaker Strut. The rest of the claims will apparently go to trial or most likely settle before that. But this part was a partial summary judgment in favor of Nike. So how it went, and I don't know if you recall the full stories in the archives of this podcast, but Sneaker Strut was doing sneaker investments, which is something you could do at the time where you buy up sneakers and you hold them for a bit, they go up, and then you sell them and then you make the money. So he bought these pairs from StockX, University Blues, Mocha 1s, a few others, and he said that something seemed off about him. And so he legit checked him on the legit check apps and they all came back as fake. And he tried to get customer support. They either ignored him or gave him a runaround. And so he resorted to posting publicly on his Instagram account that StockX support is silent whenever he brought it up that, these are fakes, and that he was just lamenting that there's no way to fix it. And so according to the court docs and everything, apparently after he posted this is when Nike approached him and met with him and asked to inspect the pairs. The details were all in the case and I guess covered in previous episodes as well too. And I think StockX eventually did offer a refund, but only after he posted on his Instagram. My overall take on this is that this is all StockX leadership's fault. It's their weight to bear. They're the ones who decided how customer support will go in the company that they want to create. They said our customer support will aggressively ignore people who say they got fakes. And that is why they lost. So if they spent a shit ton on lawyers defending themselves in this case, it is their fault. It's those executives' fault because they treated customers with contempt. The people who say that they got fakes, they treated them as if it's the buyer's fault, that no, we are infallible. This can't possibly be fake. And so only after, if you caused a ruckus and you had a big enough of a social media following, or you're lucky enough to have Nike see it, then you would get an actual customer support where they'll be like, hey, send us better pictures. Let us give you a refund. If they started out with that, they would not be in this mess to this degree. They would not have this partial summary judgment if they just responded to Sneaker Strut's original emails about it. But they said, no, we're not going to do that. We're not going to offer returns. We're not going to eat the cost. Let the buyer eat the cost. We are infallible. Now, if you total up all the sneakers that people want to return, does that compare to the lawyer's fees on this case? I don't know, but blame StockX leadership, blame Josh Luber, blame Scott Cutler, blame the executives, the CEO, the C-suite, whoever decided that treating their customers with contempt was the way to go when it comes to support. And obviously, they've learned a lesson on that. They've changed things around a little bit. I guess they have loosened things up and offer refunds and other things. And so that was a painful lesson that they had to learn because of this case and because of Nike, and something that they could have just done on their own when they started. But as for the case itself, I hope it's settled soon. This is enough, I think. Hopefully they are working together, especially if cartels and stuff are working together and stealing sneakers earlier from trains and, posting them all on StockX or whatever. And we even saw with StockX posting the CT scan of the Ruby Red Wizard of Oz that, we have technology. And I posted on Twitter that they're doing that to show that they have value, that, they are still good at this, that they can do things that Nike won't do. And Nike can probably do that stuff, but, it's not exactly easy to have a CT scanner, nor does it actually scale. But it was a PR thing to show that, hey, we are good at this. And ultimately, I think that StockX does provide a good service for the most part. It stops you from getting something that smells like marijuana or whatever it is. And ultimately, I think Nike does see the value in it. But if their lawyer's got to be a dog in a court case, then they're going to be dogs. And that's what you see here. So, but overall, I just hope it's all settled soon. Next topic, sneakers and tariffs. How is this all going to play out? How are Trump's decisions and his whims going to play out when it comes to importing, exporting, and the world of sneakers? And my disclaimer on this is that I'm not an expert on this field. And frankly, I don't want to do a deep dive either because the whims of Trump, as I just said, could change any minute. I could be talking about something right now and something will be enforced a week later and then repealed the week after that. Some president you guys got there, America. So are the tariffs on? Are they off? Are there going to be retaliatory tariffs? What's China going to do? Are they checking the product's origin of which country they were made from? Or are they checking like where are you shipping from? And does it apply to the cost of the goods or is it to the retail price? Or is it just blanket tariffs on everything? Or is it up to the US Customs and Border Protection to kind of implement the tariffs? And even that, have they even implemented a system or technology to collect the duties and tariffs on all these shipments? Or did Elon Musk fire all those people and he's trying to hire them all back? So right now it's mostly just between the US and Canada, which affects me in particular being in Canada and I live pretty close to the border. And it's never been really easy to buy sneakers in Canada. So either they're just not available here or the stock is like really low. So living close to the border, having access to be able to cross the border into like a city, have stuff shipped there, and then drive it back across has really opened up the world of sneakers for me. And I probably wouldn't be doing this podcast without it. So in the past, when I would get my sneakers shipped to the US, I would just declare everything at the border when crossing back into Canada. And I would try not to, bring back $800 worth of stuff because I live close enough. I could go like every 2 weeks or whatever. And if I just declared one or two sneakers, most of the time they just said, yeah, that's fine, go ahead. But now they are getting strict. They are now going to start asking you questions about that product that you're bringing in. What's the total value of goods? Which country were they made from? Luckily, I've picked up all the sneakers, the Unions and the Bred ones before some of this stuff was implemented. But again, I could buy something right now and it gets here 2 to 3 weeks later. And by that time, some tariff has been implemented and repealed and implemented and repealed. I don't know what's going to happen. And just looking at my recent pickups that I said that the Union ones and the Bred ones, those are made in China. The Yuto SB, which I picked up from a Canadian shop, but say I got it from a US place. They say made in Vietnam, so I'm assuming the Canadian border would say that's fine. And the Joe Fresh Goods, that one is a 992 New Balance that says made in the USA. So that one is a particular one where the Canadian border agent would say, hey, we still have our retaliatory 25% tariffs on right now, so you got to go inside and pay duties and tax and 25% on the top of that as well too. And so that brings up the other thing with New Balance, as most of their product is made in the USA. Is there going to be tariffs of bringing that into Canada? If you are just a single person crossing the border with some New Balance, you might have to pay tariffs. But what about these stores in Canada trying to import New Balance made in USA product? Will they have to pay the tariffs? Most likely. But when you're a big company like New Balance, you might have some workarounds. You might bring them in from Europe or some other country where there are no tariffs and just stop it from shipping directly from USA. So what if this trade war escalates to US and Chinese product and retaliatory tariffs and stuff? If all of a sudden any sneaker coming in from China, the Unions, the Bred ones, has 25% on top of it, that includes a shit ton of sneakers. But again, there are a lot of confusion and not a lot of clear information on how it's going to proceed. For actually going from Canada to the US, this affects me a little bit because of like selling socks. I was taking a break a little bit, but now I guess I'm forced to. All my socks, I get them made in the Philippines and they ship to me here in Canada. And then 98% of my customers are from the US. So shout out to my 2% of my Canadian customers. I've shut you out by name, but I have a privacy policy, so I can't do that without your consent. But most of them are going to the US. And current understanding as of this recording right now is it's probably going to be exempt right now because they don't have a mechanism in place to collect the fees. And it might not even affect me because it's under the threshold limit, because these socks are $20 instead of the whatever the limit is of minimus limit of $800. And actually Haven sent out an email because this affects them. They are a Canadian shop and they sell goods to American customers, essentially saying that, oh, the tariffs only apply for them to US customers for product that is made in Canada and is over 800 minimus. So if you bought a Haven inline brand pants that were $400 and they're made in Canada, I guess there won't be tariffs according to what Haven is saying. But if you bought a bunch of them, a jacket, a pants, a whole set, and your charge is $900, then you'd be paying the duties, I guess what you'd be paying if it's over 800 anyways, and tariffs on top of that. And so this affects Haven a lot because their inline brand is 70% made in Canada according to their email. And the retail price of Haven's inline brand is, not cheap. They make decent quality stuff, so they charge a premium. So this also is going to affect any US stores trying to import product from Canada. For example, ALD and Supreme often buy blanks from House of Blanks and other places like that, these knitting factories on the east coast of Canada. So right now it's still up in the air. It's still a stalemate, but this whole thing is all just a bunch of bullshit to me. Reading these World War II books, Canada stormed the beaches of Normandy alongside the US and allies. And that's why Canadians are really so upset. It's like, we were fighting beside you. And now there's talk of this annexing and bullshit like that. So hopefully it's all just a huge bluff. Hopefully logic and reason wins out in the end. But you can't always count on that. You can't always count on the unreasonable to see logic and reason. So at least some stores and retailers are getting ahead of themselves by explaining this kind of stuff like Haven did. Others have not. So, I guess for stores and brands and stuff, it's like, get that information out there if it affects you. And if it doesn't, it's probably a good idea to even say that as well too. But if this stuff escalates, if stuff from China and Vietnam and other places all of a sudden has a 25% tariff on it, as I said on Twitter, it might be a good time for everyone to undead stock something from the stack and just enjoy the sneakers that you have for a while. And so that's the kind of like the looming presence compared to this whole sneakers are back talk that we're all having right now. It's like sneakers are back, but things might be 25% more expensive. So even with the threat of tariffs and everything, there's still signs that sneakers are back. As we saw with the Spiridon, they are announcing stock numbers and it was an in-store only drop. And with the Union, there was a super long lineup, and apparently regional drops might be back soon as well too. And of course, All-Star Weekend too. Nike and Jordan were spending big bucks out there. And they just decided that we're going to make it special. We're going to pull out the sneakers that were dropping later in the year in summer and fall, like the Grape 5s and the White Cement 4s. And we're just going to make them available months earlier. And they could have did all this before in the previous years, but they just did not want to. They are in this big restock era at the time, as I called it. And when you're in a big restock era and you're re-releasing some dunks that just came out 2 years ago, you're not really in a mood to create buzz for resellers and All-Star Game visitors. So they didn't do it in the previous years. So what I'm saying is this is all by their choice. These are all by how they're spending their marketing dollars. And I'm just wondering if there's going to be any budget for later this year, or was this their big shot at it? And we've already seen kind of a scale back with Air Max month. They haven't really mentioned anything as of right now about it, but maybe they will in the last week of the month. So with that said, I have the top 10 signs that sneakers are back. And shout out to, of course, David Letterman and fellow sneaker podcasters, Sneak Dis, that also do top 10s. I'm just borrowing this segment, but of course I'm going to credit the OGs. And the top 10 signs that sneakers are back, I'm going to skip some obvious ones like the sneaker is reselling on StockX, or there's lineups at stores. And even some I already said, like the All-Star Weekend, or fake raffle bot flexes, or announcing, there's only 1,000 pairs of this sneaker. Those are all signs that sneakers are back. And even me posting Mr. Brightsides to help people get over the L on Twitter, that is a sign that sneakers are back, because there's stretches in 2024 where I didn't post any for months. So the top 10 signs that sneakers are back. If you see this happening, then you know that sneakers are back. And some of these have happened already and some have not. And the first couple I just grouped together under reselling. So number 10, IKEA bags are back. If you see these in the streets, There's definitely been a shift that sneakers are back. Number 9, those IKEA bikes, they only come back if it's the return of the unbrickables. These are the items that no matter how many times they restock, they always sell. You can loop them over and over again. So until some sort of unbreakable like the Panda Dunk or the PS5 is back, that's when you know that sneakers are truly back. Number 8, a white reseller kid says, "The hood loves these." Sneakers are not back until young Quentin announces that the hood really loves flu game 12s. So once a young Quentin says that, you know, there'll be like smoke will come out of a stack like they do when they choose a new pope. Number 7, resellers buying back stock from the public. So sneakers are not back until Soul Street is offering you $275 for your Union Jordan 1s or your Brick Nigel 4s. Number 6, sneakers are not back until we see a Business Insider article on a reseller kid who's totally funded by his parents' American Express. It's been quite a while since we've seen these, and I'm almost sure that they're going to be right around the corner any day now. Number 5, cook group callouts. You know, stealing is wrong, but no one can possibly care about this when one cook group calls out another cook group for stealing info or monitors or whatever. There's like a dozen people who care about this kind of stuff. And when this kind of stuff happens, I'm like, just at least make it entertaining. Make it a Google slide. Make it a slideshow. Make it a sock puppet one. Sneakers are not back until I see a sock puppet cook group call out. Number 4, making fun of Kais Omar. You know, he keeps posting these photos of a waterproof mudguard on a Jordan 4 or Metallic 5 or whatever the sneaker of the week is. And, you know, it went viral once, so he's posting it over and over again. And people are clowning him. You know, no one was clowning Kais Omar in 2024. And if they're clowning him in 2025, then sneakers are back. Number 3, sneakers are not back until men are angry about women's only sneaker releases. Why doesn't this come in a size 13? They should come in every single size. It should be unisex sizes. And really, men only care about these when it's a sneaker that actually flips. Otherwise, they don't give a shit. You know, there's a Makeway store in Toronto, and it's a women's only store, and they often do raffles. And sneakers are not fully back until someone complains that that Makeway raffle is doing an LGBTQ raffle and asks, where's the men's only raffle? Number 2, tribal warfare on sneaker Twitter. War is coming to sneaker Twitter. There's been battles happening over the last few years. There's been battles happening recently. There's been some unpleasantness recently, and there's going to be a whole lot more. And I foresaw this, and that's why a couple episodes ago I said, I'm staying out of this. I want out. I'm going to go make amends with the people I've wronged, and you guys go ahead and warfare. So sneakers are not back until one tribe of sneaker Twitter is battling another tribe of sneaker Twitter. And the last one, the number one reason sneakers are not back until StockX tells you to go fuck yourself.